You're tuned in to the Elevator Radio Show, a weekly program dedicated to covering news and information on elevators, escalators, and moving walkways. Produced in the wee hours of the morning, a new show is uploaded every Wednesday, sometimes even before you get out of bed. Listen to some of the comments sent in from our audience.
Rob from New York writes, Tom, are you f***ing insane? You actually get up at 2 a.m. each Wednesday to put this show out? Man, you must love elevators. Tim from Illinois writes, I'm not sure why I listened, but ever since I tuned into the first show back in 2007, I've been addicted. Matt in Texas writes, I like your safety messages, Tom. It's important to remember them each and every day. And he also adds, when am I going to win the monthly prize pack giveaway? Ron from California sent this in. Despite your inability to pronounce words in the English language, I tune in each week and am glad that you offer this service to the industry. It's better than Google News alerts. Sarah from Washington writes, love the show, Tom, and look forward to it each week. I'm glad I signed up for the newsletter. You provide a valuable resource for the industry, not only for North America, but worldwide.
Enjoy the show. And now, here's your sleep-deprived host, Tom Seibert.
Hello. Welcome to the Elevator Radio Show podcast. This is show number 531. It's week 5/15, 2019, or May 15th. For those of you out there that think saying it's 5/15, 2019 is weird. So anyway, it's good to be back. Man, it has been a busy 2-3 weeks, and I do appreciate everybody's patience in me coming back to the program. Had a wedding to prepare for, not my own, but my niece's, which was wonderful. It was just busy. Had family in town, which was nice, and it was just, when you get together for a wedding, it's one of those things where as you get older, funerals seem to be the thing that you end up going to more often than not, or putting a suit on, than a wedding. So it was definitely nice to have a wedding to celebrate, and loved it. But it's just really busy, so it was good to be back. We do have a good show for you today. I did not pull all the content from the 2-3 weeks, but I did touch on a few of which are pretty important, I think, in terms of what was being covered by the news, the media, and online. This is the first time probably in the 500 shows that I've done where I have seen the quote, I-team type investigative reporting done regarding elevator inspections in 3 major cities, which to me was it doesn't happen too often. So I don't know whether or not as media conglomerates are basically, more networked throughout the country, if that was just one of those things where one city ran with it or one news entity ran with it and then the others just followed suit. I'm not quite really sure on that, but it was just interesting to see, and I'll get into that in the show notes. And I just want to, and I'll preface that in when I get into covering the commentary for the show. Just as a reminder, those of you who are tuning into the program today or have found this podcast either through iTunes, Blueberry, on the Facebook page, wherever you are pulling the content from or watching it, get over to elevatorradioshow.com. If you haven't already done so, that's where the complete show notes are, along with archived programs. In addition, we do have the Elevator Safety Report posted up in the top menu, so you can go ahead and download that anytime you'd like and read that. So anyway, good to be back. As I noted before, I'll have you had it here pretty quickly. So stay tuned. The news for this week is up next.
Let this week's news stories give you a lift on what's happening in the vertical transportation arena. Each news segment is organically dug and fresh with news stories of the week. Got lift? If not, stay tuned.
Okay, just a preface here. If you are tuned in or you are on the website elevatorradioshow.com for this week's posts, you'll see a photo, and I will touch on the photo, or I'll talk about that at the end of the program, because this is just as equally as important as the inspections that were covered on the show. First news article: person falls down elevator shaft in New York. There's apparently not a whole lot of information to report. This actually occurred, gosh, I hate this, South Slope, Brooklyn. Person who fell down an elevator shaft at 5th Avenue building Tuesday afternoon is expected to live. Let's see, firefighters helped a person out of the elevator shaft at 625 5th Avenue between 18th and 17th Streets and into an ambulance just before 3:30 p.m. So no details about this, but I'm sure that authorities are investigating exactly what perhaps had happened on this. And no news was reported after this article had been shared online. So I'm assuming that whatever the cause was, maybe not really an important one, or I don't know, whatever happened. So first news article that I am sharing today comes from Channel 6 ABC Action News, and the title of it is Investigative Report More than 1,600 Elevators in Philadelphia Area Have Expired Certificates of Operation. I'm not going to play the video because it will definitely cripple my computer in terms of memory and capacity and the ad blocker, stuff like that. So, but important notes to share regarding the piece that was written, which was, not uncommon for many cities throughout the country. Is the ability to track inspections, to enforce them, and to determine really, whether or not they're valid or not. And how I'm saying this is that a lot of the systems that cities use are old, they're antiquated, and without proper investment in the technology that drives those, that keeps track of those records, it's very difficult, or can be very difficult, to really keep a handle or get a handle on inspections that are out there. I've seen it firsthand. I'm not going to mention the city that I've seen it firsthand with, but it is definitely an issue that many cities deal with today. There are software programs out there, and we link some of those up in. We talked about these. We've talked about them in the past. So hopefully, cities, as they realize it's getting more difficult to keep track of records, there are more records, and to streamline operations, they will look to programs that are out there, apps that are out there that will help with this process. And I know it's not an easy task whatsoever. I deal with software in my day job, not easy whatsoever. But that was the one concern I had as the report was shared online. Next one was an investigative report as it relates to Boston. Again, I'll let everybody watch that on their own. And then the last one was Los Angeles. And my whole point, if you are in a, quote, I-team investigative reporter, this is what I ask of you, because this does not really happen when the, quote, I-team digs in deep and tries to figure out why there are expired elevator inspection certificates out there. They don't, it's to them, it's like the if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. And if the world is unsafe, or there's there's a chance of urgent necessity, which I'm not saying there's not, but the reality is that these I-team investigative reporters, if you are one of these people who are listening to this program, or you are reading the post online, please do me a favor, go and do the numbers as you investigate why there are certificates that are expired in elevators. Just do the numbers. Pull up your Excel sheet. Find out how many inspectors are in the department that handles the elevators. Find out how many devices they are somewhat required to inspect yearly. Might be an escalator, might be an elevator, might be a dumbwaiter, might be a moving walkway. It may even include amusement rides in the summer, as those carnival things pop up and drop off everywhere. Okay, so take that number and then get an average of how long an inspection may or may not take, and do the math. Do the math and find out, is there enough funding being allocated to the department? Are there enough inspectors to inspect the number of conveyance devices, elevators, escalators, moving walkways, etc., based on the number of inspectors that are there? The reality is that in most times, the people that work in those departments are not going to share that information. They're not going to say, oh yeah, we are, the higher ups are not giving us enough money, enough resources. It's their job on the line. So what are they going to do? They're going to get interviewed and basically just do the best that they can. But as an I-team, investigative reporting entity, please just go deeper into the article and the story and really get into it. There's, it's a bigger issue than you can imagine, and it does nobody any good just to do this shock and awe type of tactics where you got people out there thinking really, really bad things are going to happen, which they might, but in the end of the day, there's a solution. There's a solution to those. There are entities out there that do are fiscally, financially responsible. How can I say this? While at the same time not losing money. So it's kind of a, in terms of inspections, that is. So And that's another thing to look at. If people are charging $65 for an inspection or $125, I don't know if that's enough. I don't really know. But at the same time, it's got to make sense in order to protect the riding public. And again, don't call me. I will not comment other than what's on this program. But please, if you are listening to the show as an investigative reporter, please do the numbers. Pull those numbers up, because none of you do that ever, really. You don't do that. You don't go deep enough, and I'm asking you to go deeper than what you do. You may not care, but at the end of the day, it may make a difference if people understand that the funding that's there for the inspection department for elevators, it might even apply to plumbers, the buildings, other building departments as well. But reality is that it's going to make a difference at some point once those numbers are shared. And the reality is that there's just simply, typically not enough funding is part of that huge equation, and inspectors. So please, that's all I ask. And I write about that in the blog post as well. Next news article: repairman burned in Palo Alto elevator shaft fire. You don't see this every day, and hopefully these two repairmen are okay. Apparently, two repairmen suffered critical but not life-threatening burns Tuesday when a fire erupted inside an elevator shaft. Yikes. They are trying to determine the reason behind the fire, and hopefully they do. Next news article: TKE, or ThyssenKrupp, I should say, abandons plans to split into two. If you recall, there were rumors on the street indicating that ThyssenKrupp, their elevator division, might be spun off. But at this time, they are not looking to do that. So link is in the show notes. Yeah, there was quite a bit of, just concern. It was kind of interesting how quickly, through the grapevine, there was information on that, like who might buy them or what might happen. I'm like, what? Anyway, but for now, they're not going to be doing that. Next news article from St. Louis, fox2now.com. City of St. Louis investigating if Art Loft broke ADA requirements with broken elevators. First time that I've seen any type of article relating to elevators not working and whether or not they violate either the ADA Accessibility Act or fair housing guidelines or rules as St. Louis has set up. So I would say, yes, they violate ADA accessibility. When they're broken, when they're working, they're fine. That's the long and short of it. And but ultimately, ADA does not address whether or not buildings need to be accessible for a period or certain period of time that I'm aware of. Although maybe the new version of it does. I'm not really sure. All right, brake failure blame for elevator accident. If you recall, in Chicago, I'm sorry, this is not it. This is the Houston accident that occurred when a nurse was injured in an elevator accident. The report from the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation is pointing the finger at a brake failure. So a terrible accident where a nurse was injured in a hospital elevator. More on that, you can read about that. Link is in the show notes. So many little pop-up things. Back. We're almost there, sorry. I do not know what's going on with the interweb today. If you've ever been to Chicago, one of the coolest places to go, or one of the neatest, oldest elevators in Chicago, is in the Fine Arts Building on Michigan Avenue. It's a really cool building. We have some of our equipment in it. I recommend a watch if you can go, but this is where the one of the last elevator operators in Chicago is, and I hope they keep an elevator operator there. So it's one of those deals where if you watch the video, it gives you a good oversight on really what an elevator operator was supposed to do back in the day. They knew everybody in the building. They knew if somebody should be going to a floor and somebody should not be going to a floor. They were the lifeblood of the building. They were the gossip. They were the person you told somebody if you wanted everybody to know about something. And they would hear things. So it's pretty cool that this gentleman is still doing elevator operating, and as he noted that in Chicago, as things typically work, if you know a guy who knows a guy, you get a job. So he talks about that and how he got the position as elevator operator at the Fine Arts Building. I think there's even a union for it, to be honest with you, still, but I could be wrong. But it's a really old elevator. I'm sure there's other elevator operators out there, but this is pretty cool. Stranded student visitors are helped at the Kennedy Center. These photographs just terrify me when I see them. You know, I always ask myself, and if you're listening to the podcast, not watching not watching the video on YouTube, it's basically, firefighters with this basically aluminum support structure. In this one, it's actually braced up against the header, which I don't know if that would necessarily be that safe, or structurally sound. But anytime I see something like this, I'm like, man, why can't they just get a mechanic out there to help out? But that's not always an option, unfortunately. But you figure an elevator mechanic might be able to do that. It sounds like maybe there was an overload, perhaps. Not really sure, but everybody's fine, thank goodness. But I just cringe when I see firefighters around an entrance that's open with rappelling gear. And I wondered, like, did they just do that so they could get some training in it, So anyway, and maybe it's a split decision, one of those deals. Full report has been released regarding the Hancock Building elevator stall. If you recall, the elevator Hancock Building elevator, as I repeat that 18 more times, stalled, and then firefighters had to cut through a wall at a lower.
This is the box that starts.
This is the box now. Sorry about that. That had to get people out of it. Was pretty involved, but apparently you can read that. Actual report is in the link of that link, in the article link. So read more about that in the show notes. City Hall's elevators on its last trip. I hate reading stuff like this, especially when it comes from an architect. So City Hall's elevators on its last trip. A contractor with the city said it is at the end of its useful life, said Mike Snyder, the architect with Ganning Fleming, the city council, Thursday night. So they're going to replace it. I'm not against replacing elevators whatsoever, but at some point there's some historical value to what's there now, and it's hopefully some of that is preserved. This coming from the Williamsport Sun Gazette. And the last news article for this week's program, 513, is terrifying because you read more about this happening in China or in Asia, and the title says it all. Boy sitting on escalator loses finger. Parents demand mall pay medical costs. Please, there's a photograph here. The boy sitting on the escalator, and obviously did not get up in time, or I'm not quite sure where he lost his finger. But the reality is, please, as parents, if you see something like this happening, please prevent it. If you had no idea that escalators could be dangerous if not ridden properly, please just teach your kids how to ride this equipment safely. If you ride it safe, there should be no problems whatsoever. Little fingers get stuck in a variety of different little places they should not be. So, yeah, just avoid these kinds of accidents from occurring. And as always, if you need resources to do this, visit eesf.org. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show, everybody. It is a busy end of May for the next 2 weeks. June is going to be packed as well. As many of you have graduation and summer vacations planned, just do me a favor. Make some time for yourself, for your family, for a trip away from work. We all work way too hard, and we don't take a moment to smell the flowers along the way. So make sure you're doing some of that. I will try to heed that advice as well. And as always, work safe out there. We'll talk to you next Wednesday. And again, if you want to see that video of that little boy on the escalator, go to elevatorradioshow.com. It's show number 531, not 513, but 531. And you can see it, which is just a little terrifying. And it sounds awful. These are preventable accidents from occurring, and we each have a part in doing that. So anyway, have a great rest of the week, everybody. And we will talk to you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.